When King Agamemnon sailed home from Troy, he expected a parade. He expected glory. Instead, he got an axe to the face. This is the story of his wife, Clytemnestra, the most patient killer in history. 10 years ago, Agamemnon tricked Clytemnestra into sending their daughter, Iphigenia, to a wedding, only to sacrifice her to the gods for favorable winds. While Agamemnon was fighting in Troy, Clytemnestra wasn't crying. She was plotting. She took a lover, Aegisthus, who also hated Agamemnon, and together they ruled the kingdom with an iron fist, waiting for the king's return. The day finally came. Agamemnon's ship arrived, and to make matters worse, he brought home a souvenir, a new mistress, the Trojan princess Cassandra. The audacity of this man. Clytemnestra played the role of the loving wife perfectly. She rolled out a literal purple carpet for him to walk on, a luxury reserved only for the gods. She said, "Welcome home, my king. You must be tired. Why don't you take a nice warm bath?" Agamemnon, arrogant and clueless, walked into the trap. He left his sword and armor at the door. He stepped into the bath, naked and vulnerable. As he relaxed in the water, Clytemnestra threw a heavy net over him, trapping him like a fish. Then, she didn't use magic. She didn't use poison. She picked up a double-headed axe, a labrise, and she hacked him to pieces. She then killed his mistress, Cassandra, for good measure. When the citizens found out, Clytemnestra didn't apologize. She stood over the bodies, covered in blood, and said, "This is justice. He killed my flower, Iphigenia. Now I have killed him." In Greek mythology, women are often victims, but Clytemnestra? She was the judge, jury, and executioner. Imagine you are Orestes. You come home from exile and find out your mother, Clytemnestra, has murdered your father, Agamemnon, in the bathtub. The god Apollo appears and gives you an order. Kill your mother to avenge your father. But here is the catch. Killing your mother is a mortal sin. If you do it, the Furies will come for you. Orestes was stuck between a rock and a hard place, but he obeyed the god. He marched into the palace, faced his mother, and killed her. Justice was served. Or so he thought. The moment Clytemnestra died, the ground cracked open. Out came the Erinyes, the Furies. These are not cute goddesses. They are ancient nightmares. They have snakes for hair, blood dripping from their eyes, and they can smell the blood of a matricide. They don't kill you. They drive you mad. They chased Orestes across the world. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He could only run, hearing their screeching in his ears 24/7. Finally, Orestes collapsed in Athens, hugging the statue of Athena, begging for help. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, realized that this cycle of blood for blood had to stop. If A kills B and C kills A, it never ends. So she invented something revolutionary, a trial. She set up a court on the Areopagus, the Rock of Ares. 12 citizens of Athens sat as the jury. Apollo was the defense attorney for Orestes. The Furies were the prosecutors, demanding his blood. The vote was cast. It was a tie. 6 for guilty, 6 for innocent. In a tie, the deciding vote belonged to Athena. She voted for mercy. She declared Orestes a free man. "The cycle of violence ends here," she said. The Furies were furious, pun intended, but Athena offered them a new job. Instead of punishing people out of pure rage, they would become the kindly ones, Eumenides, the guardians of justice in Athens. This story is crucial. It marks the moment Greek mythology moved from barbaric vigilante justice to a civilized legal system. But let's be honest, Orestes probably needed a lot of therapy after that. This is the most disturbing story in Greek mythology. But before you judge Oedipus, you need to know one thing. He didn't know. He was a good man, a smart hero, and a great king. But the gods decided to ruin his life before he was even born. It started with a prophecy from Apollo. The baby will kill his father and marry his mother. His parents, the king and queen of Thebes, were terrified. So they pierced the baby's ankles and left him to die on a mountain. But a shepherd saved him, and he was adopted by the king of Corinth. Oedipus grew up thinking the king of Corinth was his real dad. One day, he heard the prophecy, "You will kill your father and marry your mother." Horrified, Oedipus ran away from home to protect the parents he loved. He thought he was escaping fate. Actually, he was running right into it. On the road, he got into a traffic argument with an old man in a chariot. Road rage kicked in. Oedipus killed the old man. He didn't know that old man was his biological father, the king of Thebes. Strike one. He continued to Thebes, which was being terrorized by the Sphinx, a monster with a human head and a lion's body. The Sphinx asked a riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 in the evening? Oedipus, being a genius, answered, man. Crawling as a baby, walking as an adult, using a cane when old. The Sphinx killed herself. The city was saved. The people were so grateful they made Oedipus their new king, and as part of the job, he married the widowed queen, Jocasta, his biological mother. Strike two. Years later, a plague hit the city. Oedipus vowed to find the cause. He played detective. Slowly, the clues came together. The witness testimonies, the shepherd's confession. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. The man he killed on the road was his dad. The woman he slept with was his mom. Jocasta couldn't handle the truth. She hanged herself. Oedipus didn't kill himself. He did something worse. He took the gold pins from his mother's dress and gouged his own eyes out. He screamed, "Why should I see when the world is so ugly?" He spent the rest of his life as a blind beggar. The lesson? You can't outrun your destiny. We all know the story of Jason and the Argonauts, the brave hero who stole the golden fleece. But here is the truth. Jason was useless. The real MVP was his girlfriend, Medea. Medea was a powerful witch. She fell in love with Jason and did everything for him. She betrayed her father. She killed her own brother to help Jason escape. She used her magic to defeat monsters he couldn't handle. She gave up her home, her family, and her reputation, all for Jason. And how did Jason repay her? After they settled in Corinth and had 2 beautiful sons, Jason decided he wanted an upgrade. He announced he was leaving Medea to marry Glauce, the young, rich princess of Corinth. He told Medea, "It's just business, babe. I'm doing this for our children's future." Classic gaslighting. Medea didn't cry. She plotted. She pretended to accept the breakup. She even sent a wedding gift to the new bride, a beautiful golden robe and a crown. Princess Glauce, being vain, put them on immediately, but the robe was soaked in poison. As soon as it touched her skin, it burst into magical flames. The princess burned to death. Her father, the king, tried to save her and caught fire too. The entire palace burned down. But Medea wasn't done. She knew Jason loved his sons. She knew the only way to truly break him was to destroy his legacy. So, in the most horrifying moment in Greek theater, Medea killed her own children. When Jason arrived, screaming and furious, he found the bodies. He looked up and saw Medea hovering in the sky. She wasn't arrested. She wasn't punished. She was escaping in a golden chariot pulled by dragons, sent by her grandfather, the sun god Helios. She looked down at Jason, broken, childless, and alone, and basically said, "You thought you could use me and throw me away? I am not a stepping stone. I am the end of the line." Jason died years later, a lonely old man, crushed by a piece of his own rotting ship. Medea? She got away with it. The moral of the story: be careful who you betray, especially if she knows magic. What would you do to save the person you love? Would you walk into hell? Orpheus did, and he almost succeeded. Orpheus was the greatest musician in history. When he played his lyre, rivers stopped flowing to listen, and stones cried. He was madly in love with his wife, Eurydice, but on their wedding day, tragedy struck. Eurydice was bitten by a viper and died instantly. Orpheus didn't accept it. He did something no mortal had ever done. He walked down to the underworld alive. He used his music as a weapon. He played a song so sad that Charon, the ferryman, gave him a free ride. Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog, fell asleep. Even the Furies stopped torturing souls to listen. Finally, he stood before the king and queen of the dead, Hades and Persephone. He sang of his pain. And for the first time in history, Hades, the cold-hearted king, shed a tear. Hades agreed to release Eurydice, but there was one condition, one simple rule. She will follow you up to the world of the living, but you must not look back at her until you are both completely out into the sunlight. If you look back, she is gone forever. Orpheus agreed. He started the long, dark climb up. He couldn't hear her footsteps. She was a ghost, after all. He started to worry. Is she really there? Did Hades trick me? Is she following? The doubt ate him alive. For hours, he climbed. Finally, he saw the light of the sun. He stepped out of the cave. He was so happy, so relieved. He turned around to say, "Look, my love, we made it." But he made a mistake. He was out, but she was still in the shadow of the doorway. He looked back too soon. He saw her for a split second. She whispered, "Farewell." And then she dissolved into smoke, pulled back into the darkness forever. Orpheus tried to run back, but the gates were barred. He lived the rest of his life in misery, rejecting all other women, only singing sad songs. Eventually, a group of frenzied women, Maenads, got tired of his depression and tore him to pieces. A tragic end? Maybe. But at least in death, his soul finally found her again. Imagine being locked in a prison that you built yourself. That was the life of Daedalus, the greatest inventor of ancient Greece. He designed the labyrinth to hold the Minotaur. But King Minos was so paranoid about the secret getting out that he threw Daedalus and his young son, Icarus, into a tower. Escape by land was impossible. Escape by sea was blocked. So Daedalus looked up. "Minos may control the land and sea," he said, "but he does not control the air." Using bird feathers and candle wax, Daedalus engineered 2 pairs of giant wings, humanity's first drone project. Before they took off, Daedalus gave Icarus a crucial safety briefing. Flight plan: do not fly too low, or the sea spray will clog your wings. Do not fly too high, or the sun will melt the wax. Stay in the middle. This is the Greek concept of the golden mean. Moderation is key. But Icarus was a teenager, and moderation is boring. They jumped. They flew. Imagine the feeling. For the first time in human history, a man was soaring like an eagle. The adrenaline kicked in. Icarus forgot the warning. He felt like a god. He flew higher, and higher, and higher. He wanted to touch the sun, but physics is cruel. As he got closer to the heat, the wax began to drip. Yellow tears fell from his shoulders. Suddenly, the feathers loosened. Icarus flapped his arms, but he had no lift. He was just a boy with bare arms. He fell thousands of feet, screaming his father's name. He splashed into the sea and drowned. Daedalus looked back and saw only feathers floating on the water. He buried his son on an island and hung up his wings forever. The lesson? Do you know someone who can't stop looking in the mirror? Or takes 500 selfies a day? We call them narcissists. And it's all thanks to this guy, Narcissus. He was the most beautiful man in Greek mythology. Everyone loved him. Men, women, nymphs. They all threw themselves at him. But Narcissus rejected them all. He didn't just say no. He was cruel. He told them they weren't good enough for him. One of his victims was a nymph named Echo. Echo had a problem. She was cursed by Hera to only repeat the last words spoken to her. When she saw Narcissus, she fell madly in love. She followed him through the woods. Narcissus shouted, "Who's there?" Echo replied, "There." Narcissus, "Come here." Echo, "Here." When she ran to hug him, he pushed her away and said, "I would rather die than let you touch me." Echo was heartbroken. She ran into a cave and cried until her body faded away, leaving only her voice. That's why we have echoes in mountains today. But the goddess of revenge, Nemesis, saw this. She decided to give Narcissus a taste of his own medicine. She cursed him. May he who loves not others love only himself. One day, Narcissus was thirsty. He knelt by a perfectly clear pool of water to drink. He saw a face in the water. He didn't realize it was a reflection. He thought it was a beautiful water spirit. He fell in love instantly. He tried to kiss the reflection, but the water rippled and the face disappeared. He tried to hug it, but his arms just got wet. He couldn't leave. He stopped eating. He stopped drinking. He just stared at himself, whispering, "I love you," to the water. Slowly, he withered away. He died right there on the riverbank, staring at his own face. When the nymphs came to bury him, his body was gone. In its place was a flower with white petals and a golden center. The narcissus flower. Daffodil. The lesson? It's okay to love yourself. Just don't fall in love with your selfie.